Right, kia ora koutou, ka nui te mahi kia koutou. Welcome to AMA Online on this fine Saturday morning. So great of all you keen people to join us bright and early on such a lovely day on your weekend. Before we get started with our keynote this morning, I would just like to introduce myself. My name's Megan Clune. I work at the University of Auckland and I'm also president of the Primary Mathematics Association. And would also like to extend a huge thank you to the University of Auckland for supporting us with all the Zoom sessions this morning so that AMA could hold this online day. Go to my next slide. Just a couple of reminders. Just a reminder that the chat is down the bottom. We ask that you introduce yourself as you come online, just so that we know where you are, and send your messages to everyone. And also post any questions that pop up, just post them throughout the session in the chat, and we will monitor those and address those when we have time. We ask that you stay on mute just so that we don't have any feedback or any issues, and please make sure your volume is up. The session is being recorded, so we will post that on the AMA site at a later date. And if you drop out for any reason, you should just be able to rejoin via the link that you used just now. So without any further ado, I shall introduce our keynote. Dr. Lisa Darragh, who is going to talk to us about learning mathematics online. What do parents and principals think, and are they right? It's my pleasure to introduce Lisa, who's my colleague, and she is a lecturer at the Faculty of Education and Social Work at the University of Auckland. So over to you, Lisa.
Thanks, Megan. Let me just share my screen first. Well, Atamaria, ngā mihi mahana kia koutou, tēnei rā. As Megan said, my name is Lisa Darragh, and I'm delighted to be talking to you this morning on this sunny day on my topic, Learning Mathematics Online. What do parents and principals think? And are they right? That's a slightly obscure title. Basically what I'd like to do today is share with you a couple of research projects that I've been doing from the parents and principals' perspectives. And the are they right is an invitation to you all to think a little bit critically about some of these results and some of these ideas. But let me start by introducing myself a little bit. I was a primary school teacher for a good 10 years, teaching mostly at the year 8 level. After having 2 children, I did my doctorate at the University of Auckland and then took my whole family off to Chile for 3 years to do a postdoc. And I'm sure that those of you who have traveled overseas know what it's like when you come back to your own country and you kind of just see it fresh and taking on a different perspective. And so when I came back to New Zealand, I was particularly looking at the maths education landscape with fresh eyes. And one of the things that I really noticed when I came back was how many schools seem to be using these online programs, so like Mathletics and Study Ladder, Maths Buddy, Sumdog, and others as well. And I thought it was quite intriguing how these had really entered our system a whole lot since I've last been involved in teaching. My own children were using them. My daughter used Maths Buddy for a couple of years. Now she does Education Perfect. My son has done both Study Ladder and Prodigy at his primary school. And so I really thought these were worth investigating a little more. But I want to admit to you all first that my own opinion of these programs are a little bit conflicted. And I've got this illustration here to kind of represent that kind of conflict. My experience as a teacher means that I know that any kind of time-saving resource is really important, and anything that really inspires children in their maths learning just can't be ignored. But I also have some concerns with these types of programs, and I'm sure this flavour of concern is going to come out in my talk today. But this illustration is a prediction of what school was going to be like in the year 2000, from 100 years before that. And I actually think it's not a bad prediction when you think about these online programs. I mean, you've got the teacher sidelined and they're feeding the machine, which is in turn feeding the minds of the children as they sit there individually consuming the learning. So my argument today is simply that we need to interrogate these programs a little bit. And I think nowadays questioning the role of online maths learning of any kind is super relevant, because we've really been thrust into it with this coronavirus lockdown situation that we've all been experiencing. So today, my aim is to talk with you briefly about two research projects. One of them was looking at the place of these online maths instructional programs in New Zealand primary schools, and that took on a school leader perspective, so either the principal or the head of maths. And then the other research project was looking at parents' perspectives of home learning maths during the lockdown. And these two are linked with this idea of the online maths. After I've talked about the first one, though, I will stop for 5 minutes for questions. So if you've got any questions at all or comments to make as you go through, please pop them in the chat, because in about 10 minutes time, we'll be able to answer some. So the first study, I sent the survey out to all of the primary schools in New Zealand, approximately 2,000 of them, and 477 replied. And of those, almost 80% use these online maths programs. Now, this is probably an inflated number. The type of person who's going to be interested in these programs is also going to be interested in answering the survey. But I think we can safely say there's a lot of these programs being used in New Zealand. And when I asked about who pays for them, there was a mixture between parents, schools, combination of parents and schools, and only around about 20% of them use just the free options of the programs only. So I think this in itself is a reason that we need to really look at these programs, because they cost a lot of money, and this is within a supposedly free education system. Something that I was a little bit surprised about, though, was the sheer variety of these programs in our schools, and also that lots of schools use more than one program, so like either different teachers using them or using them at different levels. And school leaders stressed in their responses that these online programs were only a part of the overall maths program in their schools. This table here shows the variety of learning experiences that are typical in our primary schools. Teaching groups based on numeracy is the most common, but there's also a lot of teaching via digital technologies, and we can see maths worksheets and textbooks, also collaborative problem solving type teaching as well. And actually 80% of the schools selected 3 or more of these different responses. So we can certainly see there's a variety in the sorts of experiences we're providing our children. So what I want to do now is share a few quotes from the school leaders that they use to sort of justify the use of the programs. And I'll let you read it. So what I want to point out in this quote is the idea that there is this idea that because the devices are in our schools, then we need to use them. And that's something that came through in quite a few different responses. This idea of individualized learning that you can see here, or personalized learning or differentiated learning, that was a really common discourse from the school leaders. And then this idea of self-managing learning was also important. And with that came the notions of student agency and student independence. They were all strong themes. Here's another answer. And so in many of the responses, there was the sense that the digital medium is inherently appealing in itself. And then another common theme that we can see in this one is the home school link. So a lot of schools are using these programs as a form of homework or as a way of communicating mathematics between the home and school. And then, of course, assessment information was seen as beneficial, as well as alignment to the New Zealand curriculum. So I'm sharing this screen again, and I'm hoping that you probably can't quite see the fine print, but if you, I encourage you to have a look at these websites in your own time if you're interested. What I found fascinating is that the words and the discourses and the advertising they used across these programs were really consistent, and a lot of the same sort of ideas kept popping up. So we've got things like engaging and personalized and curriculum aligned. And you'll probably notice that those are very similar to the sorts of things that the principals were saying. And in fact, I saw that across. There was that very similar language used to justify use of the programs that we used in the program's advertising. And I'm not sure whether it's that the school leaders had absorbed the advertising terminology or that the companies were really kind of skilled in this education speak. I suspect it's kind of both of these things. You've got to remember that these are very profitable industries, and so they've got marketing teams, and so they know how to tap into the right sort of language that those educationalists are going to be attracted to. So on these websites, the terms that were primarily used were engaging, motivating, they build confidence, they're personalised, progress and achievement, assessment and feedback, and curriculum aligned with comprehensive activities. And when you see that these sorts of things all put together, you think, wow, these programs must be amazing. This is exactly the sort of thing we want in a maths program. But each of these things kind of have a darker side as well. Alongside the engaging aspects, you've got gamification and issues of addiction or screen time. The motivating aspects of the game refer to the points that the children earn, and those points then they can spend on reward systems like games or certificates, or quite commonly they can spend them on their avatars and buy furniture for their avatar's room and things like that. So it's a very behaviorist approach to education, and it at worst it kind of inspires capitalist behavior in young children. These ideas about the programs building confidence and providing personalised learning actually tap into a lot of parental fears that their child is not being catered for in the schooling system. And so when the school purchases these programs, they're kind of acknowledging those fears. The assessment and feedback that is so useful and purported for teacher use, actually that data is still owned by the company, and then they use that data for their own benefit, for their own adapting of their programs, and in some cases making them more addictive when they can. And then finally, this notion of being curriculum aligned and comprehensive, that kind of speaks to the idea that these programs can in fact replace school, which is a little bit alarming. So there are a number of ways that we can critique these programs. I asked the school leaders if they had any hesitations or concerns, and some of them did. So we have comments about teacher reliance or about the students picking just the easy tasks. And this idea that they shouldn't take over the program, that children should have the opportunity to work collaboratively on rich tasks that are really contextual. But a third of the leaders had no hesitations or concerns whatsoever. Of those that did, they reflected in those quotes: the gamification, teacher overdependence, the lack of quality mathematics that's sometimes promoted in the programs, and in some cases it's actually an increased workload for teachers, because if the programs are used really properly, it requires a lot of monitoring of the student use and making sure that the programs are matching the students' needs. So by way of conclusions for this first project, I've got a few comments that I think and hope will be relevant for teachers. And after this, there'll be a chance to ask questions, so please get writing. So overwhelmingly in the data, there's this idea that the online programs are to support, not to replace teaching, in which case I would say that they're kind of an expensive support in that case. The discourse on engagement promotes an idea that they're making boring maths fun, which sort of promotes the idea that maths is boring without these gamified fun aspects added to it. which makes me wonder if the other types of maths experiences have a kind of a harder time competing with these fun games. The strong discourse of student agency and independence that came in the rationales makes me wonder if this is partly an effect of our MLE environments in which students have to be more independent. I also wonder if children should be trusted with the picking of what kind of maths learning they do. I mean, I know my son would pick Prodigy every time because it has the most game time. And then one other comment is that regarding the idea of the homeschool link. I think this is a little problematic because these programs are ultimately disconnected to the classroom program. And so perhaps if these programs are used as a homework or an easy link, then maybe it's preventing any kind of real and quality engagement between home and parents. And this last point is going to segue into the next presentation. But let's stop for 5 minutes for questions. How does that sound, Megan?
That sounds great. I was halfway through typing my own question and I lost my train of thought, but
sorry.
Excellent. First of all, we just have a first question up from Debbie about, are you going to share the slides? I know this is being recorded and that will be popped up, but will you be sharing the slide deck or is it just the recording people can access?
I mean, I'm happy to share the slides. Okay. I'm assuming they can see the slides now, right?
They can see them now, so they'll be able to access the recording. But AMA can also pop the slides up as a link as well. Mm-hmm. So awesome, thank you. There is, so Bina asks, I wonder if there is an opportunity for teachers training for the use of online learning. Was that reflected in your research at all, that teachers were trained in these aspects?
So there is the next part, the next phase of this research is I interviewed a bunch of teachers and I haven't analysed those interviews yet. But from memory, I didn't get the sense that the teachers were using these programs from the training. I think these sorts of programs, they're often entrenched in the schools. I mean, a lot of the programs may sort of offer free trials to schools and then the schools sign up to contracts and then they have like a 3-year contract with the program. And then by the end of those 3 years, teachers are so used to using them that they have to be part of the program. But I wouldn't say there's much, apart from what we taught our students this year, Megan, there isn't much looking at these sorts of programs.
Lisa Hayes has a really nice commentary there, and then she's just posted the final question. So how does, and I think this kind of dovetails into my question, but she asked, how do I use or create online resources that help students become independent learners, but also lets them discover the richness of maths and work with others? I have kind of an answer for that, but Lisa, I'll let you in.
I mean, that's $1 million question, isn't it? Solve that and you've kind of nailed it. That's the sort of question that I'd like to throw over to the rest of you. How do you do it? It's in that challenge that the interesting stuff happens. I'm intrigued by the fact that you say you have an answer, Megan.
Well, a semi-answer. You could come to my session at 12 o'clock and find out one way that you might do this.
Yeah. That sounds fabulous. I mean, my favorite part of research is when you get to critique things, but you don't actually have to solve the problems. So my aim here is to make people think critically about programs and then for teachers to start solving some of those dilemmas.
So my question was, as I was listening to you, I sort of got this assumption that all these programs were catering to an individual student pathway. And so I wonder about the loss of that collaborative nature of mathematics. Was that anywhere in the research?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the idea of catering for the individual is extremely strong in all of the website advertising. There's this idea that, is your child not keeping up? Here's the solution. Or is your child not being catered for because they're top stream? Here's the solution. But whereas in the school leaders' comments, that there were a lot of sort of pointed comment, this is just part of the program, and this collaborative type of mathematics should be happening as well. But I don't see these programs as being able to cater for the collaborative, because the data analytics that they claim to use means that they're creating programs that suit an individual. So it just simply doesn't work if there's more than one person using the program. Yeah.
Heather asks, are they not skills-based programs?
Well, so there's a range. Some of them are much more targeting the skills, and whereas some of them are trying more to be everything. And certainly in some schools they're using them for that skills practice more than anything else. But I know for sure on the Mathletics website, they talk about how they're encouraging logical thinking, and they're talking about the maths processes, and they're trying to claim a much bigger picture than just the skills.
Debbie Lomax asks, what is the concern with gamification of learning? Research into the way the brain works shows that learning new concepts is acquired significantly quicker after 10 to 20 repetitions if it is presented in a fun way, compared to 400 plus of exposure to new learning that is presented without some type of play.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were talking about this in your presentation the other day, Megan, the difference between play and gamification. Often the games are used as a reward for doing the maths. The game aspect isn't part of the maths. So the maths doesn't get this playful aspect to it. The maths is the boring part, and then the game is the fun part after it. I think certainly for some children that kind of reward really works, and they do learn stuff with that motivation, but not all children.
A quick question from Shirley. Did you investigate eArcor on NZ Maths?
Oh yes, so eArcor is one of the programs, and it is the fifth most popular from memory. When I did the actual website analysis part of it, I chose not to analyze that one because it's not a publicly available website that you can just pop into as easily like the other ones, and it's not like a privatized company. So for the website element part of the research, I left eArcor out of it. But it's a good point to bring up because it does sit kind of outside of the others.
Just to follow up on that, do they use the same language to describe to entice people into using it as the other companies?
Well, because I didn't investigate that, but now that you ask the question, it would be a really interesting comparison to make, to see whether they are tapping into those same phrases and the same advertising. Should I carry on, and so we have more time for questions at the end?
Sure.
Okay. So project 2. When we suddenly went into lockdown, I made this assumption that the schools that already have these online programs, they're going to be using these a lot. I thought, well, if you had a school subscription to Mathletics, then it will just be Mathletics is going to be the maths part of lockdown. But I was wrong. What happened, as you all know, is schools provided a whole range of different learning activities for students during lockdown. But interestingly enough, there were a lot of parents who signed up to these sorts of programs during the lockdown. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me talk about this project. I sent out a survey via Facebook community groups and really quickly got 634 responses. Parents had a lot to say about their experiences teaching maths during this time. But I want to first of all mention the demographics of the participants. The majority of the respondents were Pākehā mothers who spoke English, had a university or even postgraduate degree, a high family income. They were locked down generally with 2 adults and 2 or 3 children, and had unlimited data. So you can see that these are the people who are most likely to weigh in on the topic of their children's education anyway. But I think even though their voices are typically the loudest, it's useful to hear what they had to say. But I think we do need to remember those demographics when we listen to the results. So there was a huge variety in terms of how the parents experienced this home learning. These 3 aspects were equally noticeable in those who had positive and those who had negative things to say. And I'll break these 3 down in the next few slides. So the parents with positive comments, they expressed an appreciation for the video instructions sent by teachers, especially in the area of maths, where they felt they needed extra support. Similarly, they liked the meetings via the Zoom or Google Hangouts, and also they really appreciated those teachers that were available to answer questions via email. But there were quite a few parents who had friends with children in other classes or in other schools their friends talked about this sort of support, and then they really felt that they didn't have a similar level of support. And so they had the negative comments to say about these things. Quantity of work was really tricky in this time. I mean, the exact same amount of work could be experienced by some families as being too little and others as too much. And I think teachers couldn't really win here unless they outlined a small compulsory section and optional extra work. But the quality of work was, of course, important. Parents noticed if it was just busy work versus they talked really positively about fun, mostly offline activities that they had the opportunity to do, such as exploring real life maths, doing budgeting for travel, house design, counting money, measuring the rainfall, doing building activities. There were heaps of parents that talked about the maths that was involved in baking. Others saw the maths that they were doing in playing games and jigsaws and logic puzzles. And then there were a lot of parents who took this time to sort of teach their children basic facts and times tables, or how to tell the time. And then some incorporated maths into their daily walks, looking at letterbox numbers and doing statistics with teddy bear sightings in the windows and things. So I think though that sort of range of activities, offline fun activities, gives us a little bit of hint in the way that homework could be in the future. It was very obvious to parents when the work was not the right level for their child. And I know it was a really challenging situation for teachers, and maybe differentiated learning was probably too much to ask in some ways. But this next quote captures that feeling, I think. So sometimes when parents felt that their child wasn't quite being catered for at school, it really was exacerbated and made more obvious in the lockdown situation. Every parent had a different work situation. I know I couldn't spend much time with my kids as I was trying to turn my teaching online as well. But there were a lot of parents who had heaps of time to work with their child and loved the opportunity. And then in some cases, that time with their child kind of may have contributed to damaging homeschool relationships. There was one comment, we felt really let down by the lack of effort from the school. Another comment, the school was awful. There were no maths worksheets. We will look to move him post-COVID as other people's experiences was better. I mean, that was quite an extreme comment, but it does speak to how the parents were talking to each other and comparing their experiences. And then, of course, there were a lot of parents who talked about how maths pedagogy has changed since their time. You might like this quote. So while this parent was determined to work out how to do the new maths, equally there were a lot of parents who gave up helping because their way was wrong. And the child was frustrated, the parent was frustrated, and it ended up just being too hard. So moving back to the idea of online maths learning, it was actually almost 43 parents who supplemented the work that the teacher sent by looking online for online programs. And interestingly enough, the parents were a little bit more positive overall about the online programs than they were about the work provided by school. And the reasons they gave for liking the online programs were, you might notice, they mirrored exactly the sorts of things that they appreciated in the schoolwork. The tutorial explanations, the fact that they felt that the work could be appropriate leveled, and the fact that their child could work independently probably speaks to the fact that they were busy doing their own work as parents. So I have a few conclusions for this study, some takeaway points. Firstly, it was really clear that the parents in the survey really knew their children. I mean, this might be obvious, but during the lockdown, they got the opportunity to know their children better in terms of their maths learning. I found it a bit surprising after lockdown that when we had reports home and parent-teacher interviews, there wasn't much information solicited from me as the parent. Excuse me. I wonder if the parents turning to these online programs during the home learning means that they can gain traction. I've received a number of Facebook ads for Math Buddy and Mathletics and things since all the lockdowns. And so they're using this opportunity to really up their advertising. The instructional videos were really, really useful. So whether these are instructional videos embedded in the online programs or whether they're instructional videos that the teachers made, they were really appreciated by parents. And it makes me wonder if going forward, it would be useful for teachers to make a bank of little instructional videos about how to do the maths that could be used, you know, in the future. And then finally, this rejection of the parents' maths is problematic. And this is something that's been found in the international research. Parents are often excluded from helping their children in maths because of the changes in curriculum and maths pedagogy. I wonder why homework couldn't involve mum or dad, asking mum or dad to teach their children how they did maths in their day, and then acknowledging these old-fashioned approaches as also being valid. So what I might do is, I've just got 2 slides left, so I might tie together somehow all these 2 different projects, and then we'll have time for more questions and comments and discussion. So I guess these are the final things that I kind of want to emphasize. Education is free, public education is free in our country, but these online maths programs, they cost money, they cost it for someone. And most of them are profit-making enterprises, and so of course they're motivated by making money first, and the educational quality is a second objective. But then on the other hand, we do live in this digital era. We have the devices in schools where children expect to use them, teachers want to use them, and the job of teaching is, I would say, getting harder all the time. So we need to find whatever we can to give teachers support in that job. I want to re-emphasize that the online maths programs, they're a somewhat artificial way of having a homeschool partnership. And I don't think they can replace real relationships. And then of course, we may have many more lockdowns in the future. These lockdowns might be on a school by school basis. And so our learning about this online learning is going to play a role. And so we really need to think about what sort of role it will play going forward. And here are some points that we might like to discuss together. What should be the role of online maths instructional programs in both home learning and in the classroom? And what are alternative models for classroom mathematics in this digital era that we're in? And what are some alternative models for home learning of mathematics? And so I'll open the floor to, I'd like to open the floor to discussion rather than me answering questions necessarily, because some others may have the answers to these questions themselves. That's the end.
Thanks, Lisa. Another interesting perspective on the whole online learning space. We've got here a wondering from Heather. As a parent and a teacher, she found it frustrating that her son didn't want to discuss maths. She just wanted the answer or formula, and she wondered if he was lacking the skills to discuss the mathematics involved. So I'm not sure if that's sort of a pondering, or if you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I mean,
can I jump in there? This is Heather. It was meant to say he just wanted to discuss. He just wanted the answer, not I as the team. As the parent. It was just him.
That makes much more sense. Thanks, Heather.
That's how I took it to mean. Actually, as an aside, there were a lot of survey respondents who were teachers or maths teachers, and interestingly enough, they had just as many difficulties during the time as anyone else. You know, I recall someone saying, "I'm a high school maths teacher," and still they wouldn't listen to me. Yeah, I think that's a problem beyond a home learning situation, that so often maths is portrayed as something that needs a right answer, and we focus on the answer instead of focusing on the processes that are involved in doing the maths. Often, I mean, there's quite old research now that sort of has found that students think that maths any maths question should be solved within 2 minutes. And so I think it's a bigger problem, that we need to somehow be conveying the idea that math sometimes isn't solved in 2 minutes. Quite often it's something that takes a long time, and that and involves these feelings of confusion, and that those feelings of confusion are all part of it, and they're good feelings. But that's a huge culture shift, and I think there's not a quick fix for that. But yeah, I hear you, Heather. I hear the frustration.
There's been just a couple of comments about the issues people had with their own in their own sort of environments. Melanie commented, after lockdown, she had issues with parents teaching their children vertical algorithms before they were ready, and they were less likely to use mental strategies when asked gloss questions. So that was an issue she found. Isabel found their school has Mathletics, as well as maths on slides on class sites with screencastify learning, and only 5 out of 21 kids were doing their work because they would rather have spent time playing the games. And Maureen commented, 2 minutes. That explains why so many students label themselves not good at maths.
Yeah, that's a lot of comments all at once. I hope I remember them. Yeah, so the idea that parents teach their children how to do the vertical algorithm when they're not ready, that's a common complaint from teachers. But I think it's okay, honestly, for parents to teach their children the vertical algorithm. I learned the vertical algorithm and it didn't harm me mathematically. And I even think it's okay to be taught it when they're not ready. It's just a matter of how to deal with it then in the classroom, and say, hey, that's a really great way of doing it. Now we're going to try this way if you want to be teaching a different way. Now we're going to try this way, and let's compare it and see the difference. See the differences, see if we can understand how this works, etc., etc. Yeah, and I understand if you're doing a gloss test, then it creates a little bit of a challenge in saying, I want you to try doing it a different way than the gloss way. But I will say that one critique of the gloss is that it requires children to be good at verbally explaining their thinking, and that's become in math something that's really celebrated, this idea of explaining your thinking and using mental strategies, and there's a lot of good to that. But then there are a lot of children who can do maths but struggle with that explanation. My son is dyslexic, and he can do really sophisticated mathematical problem solving, but being able to explain it in words is a real struggle for him, and so he can be held back because of that. So I think we have to bear in mind that there are different ways of engaging with maths, and we should be sort of open to those different ways. So that was the first one. The third one was about the 2 minute. That was the 2 minutes. No wonder. And that was a comment rather than a question, wasn't it? You're on mute, Megan.
2 minutes. No wonder students label themselves as not good at maths.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's right up my alley of interest with student learner identity in maths. Yes, they very quickly label themselves not good at maths because of those sorts of things related to speed and basic fact proficiency, rather than some of the other things that are less noticeable as being good qualities of mathematicians. And then the second comment was about Mathletics, was it? And the rushing through so that they can play on the games.
So only 5 out of 21 students were doing their work because they would have rather played the games, spent time playing the games.
Yeah, and I mean, that's an issue. I remember when my son came home with Study Ladder on the first day, I had just started this research project and I said, oh, you know, show me, oh, you're doing Study Ladder. And I said, tell me what you think about it. He says, oh, let me show you something. And his friend had given him this code to type in to give him infinity points. And he said, and now I can play as many games as I like. And I thought, well, I mean, it's not quite the aim of the program. And I was amazed that someone knew how to do it in his class on day one. But, yeah.
I'm just quickly scanning because I sort of lost track of the comments for a while there. There's a lot of commentary around the mental strategies and commenting on the gloss and the
I mean, that almost could be a topic for another talk, I imagine.
There's a comment there about Study Ladder. So the question from Joyce regarding Study Ladder, did the teacher not lock the task to set tasks?
Was this in response to my son's thing? Yeah. I think this was the first day and they were trialing it. So there's a good chance that, you know, they hadn't worked out all the systems yet. It was probably just unlucky.
All right. Any other last minute of flurry of questions?
While people are thinking about any last questions or typing them, I'll show these two next slides that might get people thinking. It strikes me that anyone who's interested in learning on a Saturday morning might be interested in further postgraduate study. So if you are interested in that sort of thing, you can email me at that email. Or I've also been asked if I would mind sharing this slide. And this is a particular course, and it's run actually in the maths department. It's a Masters of Professional Studies in Mathematics Education. And it's, in my opinion, it's a really great course, really interesting. You can do it part-time and take 3.5 years to do it. It's targeting teachers. So in fact, you have to have 3 years of teaching experience before you're accepted into the course. And all the courses are after hours so that teachers could come along. So Tanya Evans is the coordinator and her email is down at the bottom of the screen. So please do, even if you just have questions about it, you can email her.
I might just reply to, I think it's Kelly. She asked if you could do it online. I know the most recent course that Caroline's doing, they've set that up to be done online, so there might be a number of other courses within that program that will continue to be online too.
That's a good question. We've been talking about that a whole lot, and we know that there's a lot of people who need to do these courses online, and so I'm pretty sure we're working out systems where we can cater for both online and face-to-face. So do email and ask about it.
Just a final question that I missed. Melissa, she teaches at Te Kura Correspondence School, and she teaches online all the time, and she's asking really everyone, what ways have people been able to get students working collaboratively when they are not in a space together? So that's sort of just thrown out there. I
can answer that from the university perspective. I mean, that's that's something that we tried to do, and it's really challenging online, I think. And one way that we tried to do is with discussion forums, and that works with older students to a certain extent, because their literacy skills are good enough to go back and forth on the discussion forums, but I imagine it's not appropriate for the younger children. If there's no other questions, I want to say a huge well done to all the teachers. I probably in that second project, because I was foregrounding the parent voices and sharing aspects where they felt frustrated or felt things could have been done differently. I should make one last point that there were so many parents that were so happy with the work that was provided by the teachers, and they really expressed this in some of their responses. So I know everyone had to do an amazing job turning around at the last minute and suddenly creating their teaching in an online format when all their experience is teaching in person. And so I just want to say well done to everyone for doing it at all. And thank you very much for coming along today and listening to me.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really, I always love listening to you talk. You have so much, you spark so much thought and things to ponder about in our practice. So just very, very quickly, you have other sessions to get to, and you will see these slides in the other session, so I'm not going to leave this up here for any extended time, but please do remember to fill in the feedback form, which we would love to hear your feedback from today's events. You can only need to do the feedback once, so this is something that you can do at any stage in the day, but please do that feedback. And the resources will be up on the aucklandmaths.org.nz website. So thank you again, Lisa, for your time today, and thank you everyone for joining in, and hopefully I will see you throughout the day. Kia ora koutou, have a great day with AMA today.